Round one.
Hi, I'm Last Jawa, and if you've seen the other videos on this channel, then you may or may not know that I created a little prototype of what a modern Star Wars fighting game might be like. If you're interested in Star Wars and interested in the concept of a Star Wars fighting game, then please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Now, I created the prototype simply because this game does not officially exist, and I thought this would be a fun project to do with my kids, and I never even originally intended to reveal the game to anyone until my kids said, hey Dad, this is really cool, you should share this with everybody. Then in mid-January, a gaming YouTuber who you may have heard of, Maximilian Dude, retweeted a tweet I made about releasing the alpha for the game. And things just kind of blew up from there. And then suddenly my little fan-made game was being showcased on IGN and GameRanks and some other media outlets. Now, of course, as soon as I saw this, I decided I didn't want to get sued, so I immediately took all the links down. But all the attention it got made me think that maybe this could be a sort of catalyst for making a AAA Star Wars fighting game a reality. Now, you can't think about making a new Star Wars fighting game without acknowledging the ones, or the one, that came before it, which was, of course, Masters of Terras-Kazi back in 1997. A lot of people think of that as a really bad game. And I'm not going to argue that point, but I have some really fond memories of it. Then you had the guest appearances in Soul Calibur 4 by Starkiller from the Force Unleashed game, along with Yoda and Darth Vader. They also had a Clone Wars lightsaber duel game in 2008, I think, for the Wii. And I've heard there was a fighting game mode in the Revenge of the Sith game from 2005 as well. But the question really is, if there was a modern Star Wars fighting game, who should be making it and why? Well, if Disney showed up, and said, hey, Lost Java, we think this is a great idea. Would you want to come on board a real project in some capacity? Would I say no? Of course not. I mean, that would be a fan's dream. That would be a dream job, right? But I'm trying to be realistic here. And if I was going to pick a company to make it, it would have to be NetherRealm Studios. Now, NetherRealm Studios, just in case you didn't know, is the game development studio that was basically left behind after Midway, the original arcade company who released the first 8 MK games, filed for bankruptcy in 2009. They have since released 3 more Mortal Kombat games, the most recent being Mortal Kombat 11. Now, when you think Mortal Kombat, you probably aren't thinking Star Wars would be a good fit for this style of game. But if you look past the violence and the gore, and just look at the mechanics and visual style of the Mortal Kombat games, then you might get an understanding of why a melding of the game mechanics of those games and the visuals and sounds of Star Wars would be an amazing fit. So, could a partnership with EA and NetherRealm for a Star Wars title happen in the same way that EA has partnered with DICE and Respawn? That's hard to say. DICE and Respawn are both subsidiary companies of Electronic Arts, while NetherRealm Studios is owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns the rights to DC Comics, which is a direct competitor to Disney-owned Marvel Studios. In fact, in between releases of Mortal Kombat games, NetherRealm has produced a series of MK-style fighting games utilizing DC Comics characters. The Injustice series, which you've probably heard of. Injustice Gods Among Us in 2013, and then more recently Injustice 2 in, I think, 2017. Now, of course, it's not like NetherRealm would be creating a Marvel competitor for the Injustice series, and Warner Brothers does not really have a franchise that competes against Star Wars, to my knowledge. Mutually beneficial partnerships between typically competing entertainment companies has happened before. Just take, for example, the collaboration between Sony and Marvel to bring Spider-Man and Spider-Verse characters, which Sony has the rights to, into the MCU. So, as I began to formulate the idea that something like this could work, and being somewhat handy with 3D models and game design, I decided to see if I could create something that might approximate how a game like this would work and what it might look like. Now, I immediately enlisted the aid of my 9-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old son for, ideas, inspiration, and of course, play testers. Kids love to play video games. So I started working on a prototype in the Unity game engine, just trying different things and seeing what stuck. I bought off-the-shelf animation files and started modifying them to fit what we needed, and pretty soon, we had something that kind of worked. I found that as I worked on the game and shared ideas with my kids, it became sort of a shared family hobby on the weekends. We talked about the different characters that should be in it, what their moves should be, and just generally had a whole lot of fun bonding over Star Wars. Now, I included only lightsaber characters as I felt that even though characters like Boba Fett and Han Solo are really cool, the idea of them being able to block lightsabers with their hands seemed implausible. But that's not to say that blaster-wielding characters shouldn't be included if there were a AAA Star Wars fighting game. In fact, I think they most definitely should be included as long as there is a plausible way for them to block. Now, in a fighting game, it really is all about the characters, right? The beauty of creating a game like this is seeing your favorite characters in action, and Star Wars has some very cool characters to choose from. In fact, the prequels, whether you love or hate them, introduced some of the most awesome Jedi and Sith, characters we'd ever seen, and showed, what the old favorites like Obi-Wan and even Grandmaster Yoda could do, when they were younger. And then, of course, there's, the Clone Wars animated show with Ahsoka Tano, and even the more recent Star Wars Rebels show with Kanan Jarrus and Ezra and the Inquisitors. But I think probably the biggest sort of untapped treasure trove of interesting and cool characters would be what is now called, I think, Legends, before Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm was known as the Expanded Universe. Now, the inclusion of those characters could still happen, as more recently Lucasfilm has somewhat quietly reintroduced some of them into the new Star Wars canon. Grand Admiral Thrawn, who was originally from Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire novels, has made several appearances in the Rebels TV show, and even Darth Revan from BioWare's Knights of the Old Republic video game has sort of now made his way back into the fold. But essentially, a Star Wars fighting game could have a very large roster of fighters to choose from, and if the title was successful, more characters could be added as DLC further down the line, just like the MK games. So, to summarize, now, what might a new Star Wars fighting game look like? Well, I spent about 9 months in my spare time creating a prototype by myself that sort of gives you the idea of what it could look like. Now imagine what a AAA title with major studios like EA, NetherRealm, and hundreds of game developers behind it could be. It would look amazing. Could it happen? Yes, I think it could. We haven't had anything like this in over a decade, and EA has shown that they do care about the Star Wars brand with the amazing turnaround on Battlefront 2 after the sort of less than stellar launch of that game, and then more recently with the release of Jedi Fallen Order. There seems to be a lot of goodwill towards Star Wars games right now, and the time could be right to sort of venture back into the fighting game genre, but it would have to be done right. And a right to me means NetherRealm Studios. Now, I would love to hear what you guys think, so please leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Lost Jawa, and may the Force be with you.